I've told the story many times to the police and various doctors and therapists. I still have a hard time with it. I don't know where to start. I want to skip parts. I want to exaggerate. I want to minimize. Most of all, I want it to have never happened. So why am I willing to relive it now? Well, I just want to tell my story to someone who won't think I'm crazy. I say I don't know where to start, but I guess the beginning of the trip is the best place. That means I'm skipping that first awkward date I had with Sean after chatting on Tinder. I'm skipping the glorious first few weeks with my wonderful new boyfriend, even though they were some of the best weeks of my life. It's not just because I would bore you. Somehow that part is even harder to think about than what came after. I never knew much about Sean. He recently moved to town. He grew up all over the country. He didn't speak to his parents. No siblings. Worked as a bartender. Thought I was the most amazing thing to ever walk the earth. And that last part was all that mattered to me. I had heard the term whirlwind romance before, but I had never experienced it in all its glory. We were in love, and we loved it. So we decided to go away together. He had a cabin in the woods somewhere, and we wanted to get away from everyone and everything and just be together. When he suggested we head to the cabin for the weekend, I was all in. We started the drive after I finished work. After about an hour of driving, the sun started setting. Sean was behind the wheel, and I was enjoying the sunset and the music and his presence next to me. I had the window down, my feet on the dash, and my hand out, floating in the wind. I was completely at peace. The glorious red and pink in the sky turned into purple, and then black. And through it all, we were still driving. By then, we were deep in the forest. Tall pine trees lined the narrow road. I could only see a few meters into the dark on each side. I remember that it occurred to me how easily this could be the opening scene of a horror movie. The happy couple on their way to a little vacation, going through the dark, scary forest, falling into the web of the evil killer. I told Sean. He laughed and told me I was crazy. More like the final scene of a romantic comedy, babe, he said, and flashed me the smile that still made me weak at the knees every time. Sean had brought hot tea in the thermos, and I drank it happily. The warm liquid and the steady movement of the car made my head groggy like always. Nothing puts me to sleep faster than being in a car in the dark. I nodded off. When I woke up, we were on an old logging road, with me feeling disoriented and tired. Where are we? I yawned, stretching. Oh, you're awake. He almost sounded disappointed. Do you want some more tea, maybe? I kinda have to pee. No thanks. Are we far from the cabin? Nah, we should be there in like half an hour. I can stop if you want. No, it's fine. I'd rather not have to nature squat if I can avoid it. Oh, he frowned. Okay. I put my head against the window and stared into the darkness between the trees. The huge trees towered like giants over us. I felt uneasy. I didn't like the fact that I couldn't see into the woods. It was so dark. Our lights were so bright. I felt so visible. Then I saw something, but it was gone before I fully realized what I had seen. I let out a little yelp. A man had been standing at the side of the road. Someone was out there, in the dark. He had his back turned, but when the lights hit him, he turned his head towards us. I swear I felt him look right into my soul. Sean asked me what was wrong. You didn't see that guy there? I asked, surprised. What guy? The guy at the side of the road. What? No. Are you sure that's what you saw? Yeah, it was a man. That's just really weird, that's all, Sean said, frowning. There aren't a lot of houses around here, as far as I know. I shuddered. God, I hope he doesn't follow us to the cabin. He'd have to run pretty fast to keep up with the car. I wouldn't worry about that. And that's only if he wasn't just a human-shaped tree. I guess, I shrugged. My heart was still racing. This did not seem like the closing scene in a romantic comedy. Where are we? In the woods. We should be getting close. Don't worry. Just go back to sleep. I did as he said. Let my eyelids droop as my mind slid into the warm comfort of sleep and safety. Suddenly, I was jolted out of my sleep and out of my seat. Panicked, I turned to Sean. He was slumped over the wheel, blood seeping from a cut on his forehead. I looked outside. The car was in a ditch. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the panic threatening to take over. What do you do in a car accident? Like, what are you supposed to do? Stay calm. I took a deep breath. Check for injuries. I looked over at Sean. He was injured, all right. That was clear. But was he alive? I gingerly stretched my hand towards his neck, afraid of what I might learn. I took another deep breath and let my fingers press against the spot I hoped was his jugular vein. A pulse. I sighed with relief. Sean was alive. I got my phone out of the glove compartment. My fingers shook so much it took me 3 tries to get the pattern right. I fiddled until I got the phone screen up. Everything was taking way too long. I pushed 911 into the phone, pressed call, and waited. Nothing. I looked at the phone. No service. Of course, no service. We were out in some backwoods, God knows where. We'd been in a car accident, and of course my phone had no service. Now what? I looked around desperately. I was in the middle of the woods. I had no idea where we were. I had no helpful skills. I felt the panic building. What the hell could I do? Sean wasn't moving. The car wasn't driving anywhere anytime soon. And I didn't have reception on my phone. I'd have to go see if I could get reception. That was the only solution. If I got to higher ground, I might be able to call out. It would be fine. I'd get help. We'd get out of here. I looked at Sean one last time, opened the door, and started walking back along the road. Not 30 meters from the car, my foot hit a rock, and I tumbled to the ground. I got up, dusted myself off, and turned on the flashlight on the phone. I kept checking it every minute or so to see if I was getting any bars. I was walking uphill, so I kept telling myself I'd eventually find the elusive reception. I angrily clicked away the low battery warning. After about 5 minutes, my panic subsided to a dull, throbbing fear. I had a task. Reception. I would get that 911 call through. I would fix it. I would save Sean. I made it 5 minutes into the darkness, surrounded by the tiny bubble of light my phone allowed me, before I remembered seeing that man. When had that been? Not 5 minutes before the crash. He had to be close. A small rational part of my brain tried to reason that he could help. He could get an ambulance for Sean. But a much larger part of my brain was convinced that there was something wrong, that I should be scared of that man, I still don't know what made me so sure that man was malicious. I just knew it in my bones. In the end, I decided to ignore that. I needed help. And that man could help. I yelled into the darkness. I screamed for help. I begged for it, at the top of my lungs, screaming for anyone to help me. Nothing. Maybe he'd been a figment of my imagination, after all. I tried again, shrugged, and kept walking. I felt so small, so alone, walking through the dark woods in my tiny little circle of light. The dull fear turned to pure terror as I let my mind wander, all the horrible things that could happen to us out there. What if I got back to the car and Sean was dead? No. What if I couldn't make the 911 call? No. What if that man came out of the woods? No. Don't think about it. What if Sean died? What if Sean died? No. Don't think about it. My mind spiraled slowly into what I can only describe as a slow, controlled panic. I kept it in check because I had a task, a goal. I was making that 911 call. Then my phone died. My insides fell. It was like a punch to the gut. Why the hell had I used the phone flashlight? There was a damn flashlight in the car. I cursed myself and my stupidity, but the anger was short-lived. It turned to fear. I started crying. I had never felt so useless. Sean's phone. I could go back and get it. I'd go back and get it and try again. Maybe Sean was awake. Maybe Sean was dead. No. I kept walking. I started running. I tripped, skinned my knees. I got up, forced myself to walk, slowly, carefully. After an eternity, I spotted the car. I was so afraid of what I'd see there, I had to force myself to walk up to it. I took a deep breath and opened the driver's side door. The car was empty. I just stood there, frozen. Millions of thoughts fought each other in my mind. He's fine. He left to go get help. That was the thought that won, and I started breathing again. He had left to get help. I had no phone and no idea where we were. My best option was to stay in the car. So I sat down in the passenger seat, leaning the seat back, getting comfortable. I closed my eyes, hoping I'd drift off to sleep and wake up in a different reality. I don't know what possessed me to check for his phone. I knew he would have taken it. He was a smart man. Not taking it would be silly. Sean was not silly. But I did check. And it was right there, in the glove box. What the hell? The relief that I had felt was immediately replaced by chilling fear. I was frozen in indecision, staring at the phone. I should go after him. I had no idea what direction he'd gone in. Wait, no, I would have run into him if he'd walked back. He must have walked forward. So I'd just go after him. I'd take the phone to him. I was about to get out of the car when I thought I saw something move. I strained my eyes against the darkness. Nothing. I looked all around the car. Then I looked back to the right. I screamed. A masked man, not more than 10 centimeters from the window. I scrambled to lock the door. I fumbled with the button. The door was torn open. I tried to grab it, to pull it closed again. He was stronger. The force of the pull unseated me. I spilled out of the car and felt a hand grab my arm, pulling me to my feet. I panicked, tried to squirm free. I screamed for him to let go of me. I managed to wiggle out of his grip. I turned. I ran. I heard steps behind me. He was following. I knew he was getting closer. I heard it. I ran for my life, feeling his hand brush against my arm. A hand covered my mouth. A hand twisted my arm behind my back, and then I smelled something strange. I struggled, and I fought for my life. I lost. Then blackness. The first thing I noticed was the pounding headache. I tried opening my eyes, and for a moment I thought I couldn't. Then I realized my eyes were open, but wherever I was, it was so dark, I almost couldn't tell if they were. The second thing I noticed was that I was contorted in a very uncomfortable position. My whole body ached. I was sitting on a floor, leaning against a soft wall, hands behind me. The third thing I noticed was the ropes. My hands were tied tightly behind my back, my legs tied tightly together in front of me. There was something around my neck. Cold fear spread through my veins like wildfire, and I panicked. I pulled and pulled on the ropes, but did nothing. Probably just tightened the knots. If I thought I'd been scared before, it was nothing compared to the pure dread that filled my whole body when I realized that I was not getting loose. I tried to move, but immediately realized that whatever was around my neck didn't allow much movement. My heart pounded, a crazy tattoo in my chest. My blood rushed to my ears. I stifled the scream rising in my throat with my last sliver of sanity. The one clear thought in my mind told me not to alert anyone that I was awake. The sliver of sanity grew. A voice in my mind told me that I had to get out of here. I had to save Sean. I had to save myself. I had to stay calm. I tried to make an inventory of my options. I needed to find some sort of a weapon. I was tied up on the floor of a dark room. Impossible. I needed a way out. Also impossible. I needed to loosen the ropes. It was the only thing I could possibly have a shot at. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try. For my own sanity, I knew I had to fight. I tentatively moved my wrists. The rope was tight. I twisted my hands painfully, trying to reach the rope. I let my fingertips glide over the coarse material, desperately feeling for a knot. There it was. I couldn't believe my luck. It occurred to me that whoever tied me up wasn't very good at it. I tried wiggling my finger between the rope and the knot. It didn't budge at all. Maybe whoever tied me up wasn't that stupid after all. The rope was not moving one bit. But I kept trying. It was all I had. My one and only hope. I'm not sure how long I worked on that knot. Maybe an hour. Maybe 3. And then a door slammed open. Blindingly, bright light filled the room. I closed my eyes and tried to look away as someone entered. "Drink this," a man said, shoving a glass to my lips and tilting it. I choked as what I can only describe as the most disgusting smoothie I have ever encountered filled my mouth. It tasted like meat, milk, and fruit mixed into one. I turned my head away and tried to spit it out. He slapped me, hard. "Drink," he repeated in a calm voice. I drank. I choked, and I retched, but I got it down. "Good girl," the voice said, patting my head. Soon after, I felt my mind slide into unconsciousness. I have no idea how long I was out for, but when I came back around, I was still in the dark room, still tied up on the floor. I felt around until I found the knot again. I kept on the slow, painstaking work to undo it. It made no difference, but then I didn't have a whole lot else to do. Working on the knot was the only thing I could hold on to. Still, my only hope. And then again, the door. The blinding light. The dark outline of a man feeding me that disgusting slop. The intermittent bucket for bodily functions. The loss of consciousness. Waking up, still in that dark hell, over and over. Sometimes he slapped me. Sometimes he punched me if I didn't drink fast enough. Once I threw up. That's the time he broke my nose. But that was only once. The ritual? Eat. Shit. Pass out. Eternally. I don't know how many more times that door opened. I tried to keep count, but the last number I remember clearly is 7. But there were more. Many more. 20? 100? 1,000? I couldn't say. All I knew was sleep, drink, repeat. I lost all sense of time. I didn't know if I was unconscious for hours, for days, or merely seconds. I started losing grip on reality. I didn't know if I was awake when I was awake. Sometimes I had dreams of being outside. Sometimes I had dreams of being buried alive. I'd wake up sweating, only to find that it was true. I really was buried alive. That room became a universe that I floated through. It became a submarine at the bottom of the deepest ocean. It became a hole in the ground, the center of the earth. It became my own personal hell. I only have flashes of memories from the time I spent in that hellhole. Disjointed and distorted. Terrible flashes. When I try to think of it now, it's like a black hole of fear in my mind. Most of the time, the room was dead quiet. But sometimes, I would wake up and hear ragged breathing somewhere in the room. I thought it must be Sean. I remember trying to talk, to yell for him. I remember screaming until my throat hurt, until my eyes watered. But never a response. Never any response. The frustration, the powerlessness, the intense loneliness, the horror all faded into one single feeling. Thought I was dead. I knew I was in hell. Then suddenly, something was different. The clearest single memory I have from that time. I don't know what happened, if the man made some mistake, or if he did it on purpose to screw with my mind, to torture me further. Whatever the reason, he was slower. He stayed in the room longer. My eyes were able to adjust to the light, and I saw him for the first time. I don't remember what I thought when I saw that face. I don't remember if I screamed. I just remember the feeling of my mind in a frenzy, trying to understand, trying to comprehend. It was Sean. The man was Sean. I couldn't react. I could only stare for what felt like an eternity. I stared at that face that I loved with so much passion. Then I saw it. There was something off about his face. It was Sean, but it wasn't Sean. His smile curved differently. His eyes didn't have that warm twinkle I fell in love with. It was like someone had seen a photo of Sean and tried to sculpt his face from it. It was like the angles were all wrong. The muscles, didn't move like his muscles moved. Who are you? I think I asked. What are you? He looked at me like I was something disgusting. I'm Sean. I'm your boyfriend. You know that, right? His voice was so full of hate, so unlike Sean's warm, loving voice. No, you're not Sean. Sean loves me. Sean would never hurt me. I'm Sean. I'm really Sean. Then he laughed before putting the glass to my lips. I'm really Sean, baby, he whispered as I gulped down the horrible concoction. Why? I yelled when he was done. Why are you doing this to us? Because I can, he laughed. And because I want to. And because you look like a delicious little lady. I just had to have you. And then he was gone. When I woke up the next time, I was in the dark. As always. I heard the breathing again. The ragged breathing. Sean, I whispered tentatively, not able to give up hope that I'd get a response. That man. That thing. It hadn't been Sean. He was keeping Sean too, keeping him drugged into unconsciousness. I knew it. I know it. Sean? What? A weak whisper. I can't begin to describe the joy that I felt in that moment. I wasn't alone in that darkness. Sean, baby, I'm here. I'll get us out. Out? No. He sounded defeated. Yes, we're getting out of here. Don't worry. No. No. And then nothing. I kept trying to talk, but there was no response. I attacked the rope with new vigor. I had to save us both now. Something evil was holding us, doing something terrible to us. What was that thing? Why was it wearing Sean's face? It had to be some sort of shapeshifter. A demon. He was wearing Sean's face to torment me, to break my spirit. I didn't know what kind of nefarious plan it had, but I wasn't hanging around to find out. Hearing Sean's kind voice had changed something in me. I attacked the knot with a new vigor. Finally, my sore fingertips managed to shift something in the knot. I can't describe how wonderful that felt. It might have been the best feeling of my whole life. That first sliver of hope after days, weeks, maybe even centuries in that hole, and I was free. I would be free. Another painstaking infinity, and the knot was loose. My hands were free. I was getting out of there. I was going to get out of there. I felt the thing around my neck. It was a simple dog collar. It opened like a belt. Easy. I fumbled in the dark for the knot that tied my legs together. I worked on the knot in a quiet panic. The dull dread that the man would come back before I got loose, looming over me. But then suddenly, the knot gave, and I was free. I carefully got up. It had been days since I could last feel my legs. Pins and needles I felt when putting weight on them were like a whole new form of torture. I steadied myself with my hand against the wall. Oh, I was getting out of there, all right. I needed to find the door. I let my hand trail the wall. It was covered in foam, soundproof like a recording studio. I passed a corner. I knew the door was on this wall. My fingers detected a small gap in the foam. I stopped, letting my hands glide more slowly up and down. My left hand touched the doorknob. I gripped it and paused. I had no plan if the door was locked. My only chance, my only hope, was that whoever was keeping me captive trusted in the rope. I turned the knob slowly, and it moved. The door was unlocked. The door was unlocked. I slid it open, carefully, slowly, and the light was blinding as always. I turned away, blinking, turned and looked back into the room. And that's when I saw Sean. Well, what was left of him anyway. I almost screamed. I almost fainted. I almost threw up. That image still haunts my dreams. Both his legs were amputated. The right below the knee. The left somewhere higher up. His left arm was gone from the shoulder, and his right hand was missing. A part of his cheek was gone, with a hole large enough that I could see the teeth beneath it. All of his beautiful hair was shaved. His face was so swollen. I ran over to him and shook him. I caressed his mangled face. His eyes blinked, then focused. "Get out of here," he whispered accusingly through cracked lips. "Get help. I'm not leaving you here." "You have to," he said weakly. "I can't run." He was right. How could I carry him? I stared desperately at the stumps where his legs used to be, where his arms used to be. Then he uttered the single most chilling sentence I've ever heard in my life. "He's eating me. He's eating me. He'll start with you once he's done with me." His tone was calm, stern. "Get help." I remember freezing, blinking, and swaying on the spot, staring at the horror that was what was left of the love of my life, trying to comprehend what he had just said. In a horrible moment, I realized he was right. "Go," he whispered using the last of his strength. Then he slumped over and passed out again. "I love you," I said, leaning over to kiss him. "I love you so much." I turned, tears forming in my eyes. I was determined. I was getting him out, as long as I didn't get caught. I remember the chilling fear that I felt when I realized I had to get out of there too. I had been so focused on the rope, so relieved at the door, so shocked at the sight of Sean, that I had completely forgotten our captor. I snuck up to the door and peeked out. I don't know what I expected to see there, but it sure wasn't the interior of a cozy log cabin with a fireplace and deep, comfy-looking chairs. The room was empty. I tiptoed over the next door, heart beating. I reached out a hand and tenderly pressed the door handle down, also unlocked. Why were the doors unlocked? I didn't give the question too much thought. I was in fight or flight mode, and the flight path was wide open, so I fled. And I ran, without any goal, without any idea. I just ran. The cabin was surrounded by dark woods. I dodged between trees, jumped over roots, ducked under branches. My breath grew short and ragged. My heart pounded loudly in my ears. I could taste blood and bile in my mouth. But still, I ran. When I couldn't run anymore, I walked. And when I couldn't walk anymore, I crawled. The sun set and darkness fell. But I needed to keep going. I still needed to find help. I needed to get Sean out of that hell. But I couldn't. My body wasn't going any further, and I rolled under a bush and passed out immediately. Escaping the room didn't mean the nightmare was over. I ended up wandering that forest for days. It became my new hell. I was so hungry and tired and in pain. My bare feet were swollen and covered in cuts. If it hadn't been for Sean, I would have laid down to die. I cursed myself for leaving him. I should have stayed. I should have fought. I could have found a weapon. I could have hid. I could have waited for that shapeshifter to return and killed him. I could have saved Sean. Why didn't I ever think? Why hadn't I at least gotten him out of that room? I could have hidden him in the woods. I could have done something. I decided to turn back, but I had no idea where I was or where I was going. At that point, I was just wandering aimlessly. But I kept going. For Sean. Finally, after another eternity, I stumbled over a path. I tried to keep going. I really did. My body just gave out. And the last thing I remember is falling. I woke up in a bright, white room that smelled clean. A hospital. I remember screaming for Sean. The nurses came running. Drugs were administered and I slid out of consciousness. Then I woke up again, I think. The FBI showed up. They asked me questions about Sean. I tried telling them about the shapeshifter. I told them they had to help him. They told me they'd get him and not to worry. More drugs. More questions. My mom was there, crying, telling me everything would be okay, telling me they'd get Sean. That was such a confusing time. Reality and nightmare faded together. I didn't know what was going on. Now I know more. I was found 2 weeks after Sean and I left for the trip. We had set out for the cabin in Washington, and I was found on a hiking path in Southern California. Our car was never found. Sean was never found. I do remember the moment I realized that the FBI didn't believe my flesh-eating shapeshifter story. I think that might have been the worst moment of the whole ordeal. In hindsight, I'm not surprised that they didn't believe me. I know I must have sounded crazy. In their version of events, it was Sean all along. He'd been spotted at a gas station after I'd been missing for a week. They showed me the tape, and I told them it was the shapeshifter. They had exchanged worried glances, and I pretended not to notice. Then they told me that his name was fake, and there were no records of him anywhere. They couldn't find any family, and didn't have any friends at the bar, or anywhere else as far as they knew. He'd set up a whole fake life so that he could take me to the woods and disappear. They said it sounded like he was grooming me, or something. Well, I know better. Sean loved me. He'd always been a lone wolf. He told me that. He had some friends from his childhood that he was still in touch with. I didn't know them, or their names. I had never met any of them. But then he'd never met any of my friends. I didn't think it was strange at all. We spent all our time together anyways, and we didn't talk about the past. We talked about our future. They seemed to think that my Sean was some sort of psychotic serial killer. Well, that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. Sean was the best thing that ever happened to me. At first, I didn't really care if they believed me. They were searching for Sean. That was all that mattered. And when they found him, it'd be pretty clear that he hadn't amputated his own body parts. But then I learned that they weren't searching for the cabin. They told me that he wouldn't be there anymore, that he'd be on the run. On the run? He didn't have legs anymore. I remember screaming at them, screaming for them to save Sean. And when I tried to sneak out of the hospital to save Sean on my own, I was moved to the psych ward. Another hellhole. Another prison where days turned to weeks, which turned to centuries. Doctors tried to convince me that I was crazy, that I'd invented the whole shapeshifter story because I couldn't handle the truth. The truth that Sean kidnapped me and tortured me. They told me that my mind had broken when I saw that it was Sean holding me. They told me shapeshifters don't exist. After I got better at lying, they eventually let me out. It had been months. I didn't bother searching for Sean. He was dead. I know that for sure because right after I was found, there was a massive forest fire in that very same area of the forest. I knew in my heart it was only the shapeshifter covering its tracks, destroying the evidence, burning the remains of Sean to a crisp so that he'd never be exonerated. That thing is still out there, and it terrifies me. I think about how many people he's eaten, how many times he set up an innocent man to look like a serial killer. Like Sean. Sean was a good guy. I know this. I knew this. I think. But sometimes I wonder, maybe I did go crazy. And then I drink. It's easier that way.